We do have some breaking news to report now. We're now hearing that former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright has died. I want to go to Jonathan Karl on the phone with some of the details here. John, what do we know so far?
Well, we know that she died of cancer, surrounded by her family. Of course, as soon as I heard the news, it occurred to me that in short order, we have lost two iconic Secretaries of State, Colin Powell and Madeleine Albright, in very short order. Madeleine Albright, of course, the first woman ever to be Secretary of State, somebody who was the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations in the first term of President Bill Clinton, and then the Secretary of State for nearly the entirety of the second term. And what's interesting to me here, as I think back on her legacy, is that just a month ago, she wrote an op-ed in the New York Times calling Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine an historic mistake. And in that op-ed, she reminded us that she was the first senior U.S. official to meet with Vladimir Putin in his capacity as the president of Russia. This was back in 2009 after he had taken over for Boris Yeltsin. And she recalled not knowing what to make of him, knowing he was a former KGB spy, but having a bit of a chill in meeting him and a sense of foreboding. Madeleine Albright, in her time as Secretary of State, was a strong advocate and helped make happen the initial expansion of NATO that we saw after the end of the Cold War. And she was the Secretary of State that pushed for intervention, U.S. intervention to stop a genocide in the Balkans, in the former Yugoslavia. So she, 84 years old, has just died. There'll be lots of talk about her legacy. But when you look at the issues that we're dealing with right now with Ukraine, she, was somebody who was very much aware of what was happening, had strong opinions about what was happening right up until this invasion, and knew very well the history and the fears that the world, she felt, should have about Vladimir Putin.
And John, she herself was a native of Prague. She came to the United States as a refugee herself in 1948. What does that do for the color that she added to this conversation just before her death?
I mean, think of it. She was a refugee from war-torn Czechoslovakia, and escaped the ruins of World War II to come to the United States. She later learned, she didn't know at the time. She actually didn't know until she became Secretary of State that her parents were Jewish and had fled the Holocaust. So I think that looking at this, and you see this in this op-ed, it's really worth going back to read. She just published a month ago talking about Putin's decision to invade Ukraine. I think that she saw echoes of what she had fled as a very young child in the aftermath of World War II.
And John, she also received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2012, America's highest civilian honor for her service to this country. What is her legacy?
Well, her legacy, the first line, will always be the first woman to be Secretary of State. She was a fervent advocate of the United States, what she called aggressive multilateralism, becoming a force for good in the world, but not doing it as an arrogant, go-it-alone superpower, but working with our allies. And a big part of that was pushing for democratization in the very region that we are now watching war unfold in Eastern Europe. As an Eastern European of Eastern European descent herself, she felt it was very important to see, communism was gone. Now it was important that Eastern Europe be welcomed into the West, into Europe, into the Western Alliance, become democratic, and enjoy the prosperity that Western Europe had after the Iron Curtain, descended across the middle of Europe after World War II. I think that'll be a big part of her legacy. The other thing is she was a feminist icon. She had something she said quite frequently. She would say there's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women. And she was a early and aggressive advocate for Hillary Clinton when Hillary Clinton ran for president both times, actually. And somebody, she was certainly a partisan Democrat, but beyond that, she was a strong advocate of women and women's rights for the entirety of her career.
All right, Jonathan Karl, ABC News Chief Washington Correspondent.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.